What is a risk? Risk is basically a threat. It can be a threat to your business in form of a competition, in terms of a business loss, financial loss. Um, it can be a threat of a losing customer. It can be threat of losing an employee or a client. It's basically a roadblock or threat to your business. Yeah, a threat to your existence. Also, when we talk about risk, the term uncertainty often comes out. And uncertainty is basically an event that may or may not happen, right? So you do not know whether a particular thing is going to happen. So that's uncertain. And whenever uncertainty comes in, that's also termed as risk. There's also a term loss, which is typically associated with financial institution like banking. Loss is also one word very closely associated with risk, and loss is particularly an event which has unwanted consequence or losses. When we talk about loss, we primarily talk about financial loss in a business. Yeah. So risk has several definitions, but I thought that combining everything, what are the key words that should stick with you when we think about risk? Are risk is a threat, risk is some form of uncertainty, and risk can be bringing you some kind of loss. What is risk management? Now, risk management definition is derived from the ISO 31000 standard, which is an international standard that provides principles and guidelines for effective risk management. There, risk is defined as the effect of uncertainty on an organization's ability to meet its objectives. Now, you might have noted that I have highlighted the word effect, uncertainty, and objectives. And that's especially because I'm just going to talk briefly about these words and the significance of these words in the risk definition. When we talk about effect, an effect is basically a deviation from what was expected, which can be positive or negative. Safety risks are generally negative, like any sort of risk associated with losses or death or pollution. These are typically your safety risk, and they can be negative, right? So if there is a risk of death, most of the time the risk might come true. So it's a negative risk. But there are also some cases where risk can be positive, like financial risk. Like, let's say you are investing money in mutual funds, or you're investing money to buy some shares. So there is a risk that in future, what if the investment does not come up, or what if the share price drops? There is always a risk. But financial risk may be positive. So most of the time, the risk might happen to be positive when we're talking about financial risk. Your share price, when you bought it, it might, your share price might increase, thereby you might experience profit. When you invest something in mutual fund, you might get a good return of investment. So financial risk can be positive as well. Yeah. And this particular definition is relevant for safety, financial risk, strategic risk, and project risk. Now let's move to the term uncertainty. When we talk about uncertainty, we talk about lack of information or knowledge concerning an event, its consequences, or its likelihood, right? So when you are not absolutely sure, when you do not have a certain set of data to prove something to you or to showcase something to you, that information is inadequate, and that can give rise to uncertainty, right? So whenever you have a kind of a lack of information or knowledge regarding anything in your business, so that present an uncertainty, and uncertainty is taken as risk. When we talk about objectives, we need to understand that makes the role of objectives explicit. Yeah, an activity is only undertaken to reach some goal. So objectives can be financial, objectives can be regarding health and safety, environmental goals. They can apply at a strategic level, or as per or per project, or per product, or per site. This definition leads to more transparency in discussions with stakeholders because objectives are made explicit. All in all, I think what you should remember when you think about risk are these three words, right, that we spoke about before. That risk can be termed as a threat, it can be termed as some sort of uncertainty in business or in project, and it can be also associated with loss. Yeah, these are the three keywords you have to remember. However, if you're really interested to go deep dive into risk management, you might want to get a copy of ISO 31000 standard and read about it. However, from your management perspective, since you're a first time manager, I think when we talk about risk management, this particular section, understanding this section is good enough for you at this point in time. Yeah, and maybe later on when we talk about risk management in some other videos that I'm going to upload in future, we might want to get deep dive into risk management. All right, so there are 5 steps of risk management, and let's go through the steps one by one. The first step is risk identification, and it is basically to deal with early detection of risk and documenting of the risk, and it is very critical. So the earlier you detect a risk, the better it is, the more time you have to plan for it and remediate and kind of mitigate the risk, right? So early detection is always useful. The second process, the second step in this process is risk analysis. Once you identify the risk, then you have to analyze the risk, the scope, the severity, the seriousness of the risk. All this needs to be analyzed. The third step is evaluating the risk. Once you have analyzed the risk, you need to evaluate and prioritize the risk as per its severity. Rank the risk. Which risk is more severe, where I have to put my focus on immediately. Prioritize the risk, right? So risk evaluation should be your third step. The fourth step is risk treatment. Once you have evaluated the risk, once you have ranked the risk, okay, these are my number 1, 2, 3 risks that I have to immediately look into and I have to immediately try to remediate. I need to take some action. So, risk treatment comes into the picture, and that is to mitigate or control the risk following the risk management solution of your organization. Every organization have their risk management team and risk management solution, and it's properly normally documented in your in your policies and procedures. So following that, you need to mitigate and control the risk. Do remember, not 100% of the risk can be mitigated. There can be risk, there can be some risk which cannot be mitigated because it is not 100% in your control, but you need to make sure that most of the risk that you have control on, you should try to mitigate. The last and the final step of risk management is risk monitoring and review, and that is to monitor the existing risk which could not be mitigated. As I was talking about, that there are certain risks which cannot be mitigated, like you have bought some shares and suddenly the share price have started going down. So you see there is a risk there that if I hold on to the share, I might incur a greater loss. However, you might want to monitor that because you cannot do anything about it with the share price going down. You don't have much control on that. So what you do is you monitor, and it might happen that the share price again goes up. So without doing anything, the risk can get mitigated by itself. So you have to monitor the risk which could not be mitigated. If those risks are not getting mitigated and is becoming a critical one, then you might want to take some action on them. Risk monitoring and review also talks about monitoring any new risk that's coming up. Yeah, and it also talks about reviewing your risk management process. Yeah, so the company you're working for will already have a risk management process. So the risk management team and the leadership should time and again review that risk management process, update it as per the latest updates and developments happening, and there has to be a review process there. So all in all, there are these 5 steps of risk management that's there. Your organization will also be aligned with this. And I'm pretty much sure most of the organization these days are pretty much focused on risk management, so you should have risk management there. But for you, it's important to know these 5 steps.